Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here with us today at the National Gun Violence Memorial. My name is Sheila E. Esong, and I am the Engagement Director at Giffords, the gun safety organization that was founded by the former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, who's standing right behind me. Today we are joined by policymakers, partners, advocates, and everyday Americans from all walks of life who are here demanding that we take action when it comes to gun violence. We were all here at the mall just over a year ago with the same exact installation, calling attention to honor the 40,000 Americans who die every single year from gun violence. They are represented with the white flowers in the vases that you see right behind me here. Unfortunately, today, we are also here to call attention to the now 45,000 Americans who lost their lives to gun violence last year. That is a devastating increase in gun violence deaths in just 1 year. The difference is represented by the 5,000 orange flowers that you see on the other side behind me. Now, the recent tragedies like the massacre at the elementary school in Uvalde and the targeted attack in Buffalo are despicable. But unfortunately, they are not isolated incidents. There were at least 13 mass shootings over this past weekend alone. They left 17 people dead and dozens injured. Communities in Philadelphia, Chattanooga, Phoenix, and many more cities and communities have been torn apart. Families are never going to be the same again. And while mass shootings tend to capture most of the media attention, over 100 people are killed by guns in America every single day. These are preventable deaths, preventable. Gun suicides, domestic violence, community violence, unintentional shootings. We know what will stop the crisis, but leaders in Washington must take action. That is why we're here today. The Senate needs to pass universal background checks, a foundational gun safety policy that is broadly popular. It must also swiftly confirm Steve Dettelbeck as the next director of the ATF, so that the agency is better equipped to enforce the gun laws that are already on the books. The House and the Senate must also pass legislation related to extreme risk protection orders, as well as a law to ban large capacity magazines. We must protect families and intimate partners by keeping guns out of the hands of those who commit abuse. There is so little that Congress has done to prevent gun violence, and now is the chance to change that. Today is the day. President Biden led the gun violence prevention efforts after the 2012 Sandy Hook shooting, and as president, he has cracked down on ghost guns and pushed intervention solutions to cycles of gun violence. He must continue to have his administration address gun violence with bold leadership and effective solutions. So we have a very robust speaking program here today. So I'm going to do my very best to move us through this program efficiently. Robust, that's a good word, right?
Yeah, really good.
To that end, I'm going to begin the program by introducing someone who needs no introduction, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Speaker Pelosi, just one second. Speaker Pelosi, who has been a stalwart champion for gun violence prevention over the course of her career in Congress. As Speaker, she has touched the lives of millions through the passage of major legislation, including the Bipartisan Background Checks Act. As a loyal, dedicated friend to our founder, former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, she has been with us every step of the way. And as an advocate for gun violence prevention, she has no equal. Ladies and gentlemen, Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you, Sheila, very much for your very generous introduction. I accept that compliment on behalf of the House Democrats who have all been champions, many of whom are here with me this morning. It's my honor to be with you, but it is a sad, heartbreaking time when we see these beautiful flowers symbolizing beautiful lives lost to gun violence, and that the number has increased from last year. We must act. I want to thank Giffords for your leadership, but all of the groups who have participated and are represented today. My colleagues hear me say all the time that President Lincoln said public sentiment is everything. With it you can accomplish almost anything, without it practically nothing. I say that to all the groups here because your outside mobilization is essential to our success in saving lives and passing gun violence protection legislation. Behind me here you see champions, every single one of them having made the case, every single one of them making a difference. And their inside maneuvering can just take us so far. It's the outside mobilization. So give yourselves a hand for what you are doing on the outside. I have a lot to tell you today, but we have a great number of speakers, so I will just focus on Gabby Giffords. Gabby is, many of us had the privilege of serving with her in Congress, and when we had the sad news of the assault on her life, it struck us in a way that we had never really felt before. To watch her come back with physical speech and all kinds of therapies, the strength she had to come back to make this fight, Somebody asked me the other day, what are some of your brightest moments on the floor of the House? I said the brightest moment was the day Gabby Giffords came back to the floor of the House. And I never saw an ovation like that. She is someone who is respected and across the country, an inspiration to so many. An inspiration that is, again, making a difference, but again, more needs to be done. I just do want to point out one of my colleagues, Lucy McBath, who is a constant, everyday inspiration. She's turned her own personal grief into action to save lives. And while many of our members are here, I want her legislation. Sheila mentioned the extreme risk protection order legislation, which will be passed, and hopefully will be passed in the Senate. Again, she's a part of so much other legislation, and some of that is, again, what we intend to do. Raise the age to buy weapons of war, restrict access to ghost guns, outlaw high-capacity magazines, ban civilian bump stock sales, crack down on gun trafficking, and advance safe gun storage. My colleagues here will speak to that. Many of them are the authors of this legislation. I want to just talk about Haley, my constituent. We had such an event in not this large, in San Francisco the other day. Haley came and talked to us. She lost both of her parents to gun violence. Both of her parents to gun violence. She's in fifth grade. And she is an agent for change. She is being raised by her grandmother. She and her brother are raised by their grandmother. Thank God for the grandmother. But here she is, a little girl, speaking out against gun violence from personal experience, but with great wisdom. We owe the children of our country so much more than excuses for why we don't have legislation. To our representatives of the teachers, Becky Pringle and Randy Weingarten, who are here, we also want to salute our teachers for their courage in all of this. But it is a message that I send to elected officials all the time. You can't vote for these bills because it's a problem for you politically. Understand this. Your political survival is nothing compared to the survival of our children. We must protect them. So now it is my privilege to yield the floor of them all to a great leader, a dear friend and former colleague of many of us, an inspiration to millions of Americans, an absolute force in the fight against gun violence, our former colleague, Congresswoman Gabby Giffords.
Stopping gun violence takes courage. The courage to do what's right. The courage to new ideas. I've seen great courage when my life was on the line. Now is the time to come together. Be responsible. Democrats, Republicans, everyone. We must never stop fighting. Fight, fight, fight. Be bold. Be courageous. The nation's counting on you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gabby. At this time, I would like to introduce Senator Murphy to the podium.
Very much. Well, thank you all for being here. There's no words to express my gratitude to my great friend Gabby for what she has done to lead this movement, to grow an organization that is making a difference. Gabby and I were next door neighbors our freshman year in the House of Representatives. We learned a lot together, and I'm just so proud of what she has done to be able to speak truth to power. Speaker Pelosi, thank you for bringing a difference-making piece of legislation before the House of Representatives this week. It is going to save lives. It is going to put pressure on the United States Senate to do the right thing, and we are deeply grateful for your leadership. Listen, there are a lot of very scared parents and kids out there today. They are scared for their lives. They are scared for their safety. But they're also scared that democracy is so fundamentally broken that it can't step up and answer the most fundamental concern that any parent has, the physical safety of your children. Now, the world is paying attention because of what happened in Uvalde and what happened in Buffalo, and there's good reason for that. There's something deeply psychologically cataclysmic about that number of children, that number of adults losing their lives all at one time. But there's a slaughter every night in this country. Only in America do you wake up in the morning to 110 people having been killed the day before from guns. And so it's incumbent upon us to address the real story of American gun violence, which is the mass shootings, but also the daily homicides, the suicides, the accidental shootings. That's what this House bill does, and I'm grateful to my friend Lucy McBath for her leadership as well. But the Senate needs to act now. The Senate can't wait any longer. And so we are this week extending a hand of partnership to our Republican colleagues, but we are not going to settle for a piece of legislation that just checks a box. Right? We are only going to move forward with a piece of legislation that saves lives. And we would not be in a position today to be able to have serious negotiations about life-saving anti-gun violence legislation if not for the movement that you are all a part of, if not for the organization that Gabby helped found, if not for many of the other organizations that are represented here. We have built a movement, right, that is making clear to members of the Senate and the House that if you don't do the right thing and support 90% of your constituents, then you're not coming back to the House of Representatives of the United States Senate. And so I'm grateful to this memorial. This is incredibly moving to look out over these bases. Important to remember that this represents those whose lives were lost. But if you look at the mass shootings since Uvalde, well, 25 people died, over 100 were injured, and those are life-altering injuries as well. The scope, the breadth of American gun violence is really hard to calculate and imagine. This just gives you a small window into the horror that we have decided to live with. Hopefully we make a different decision this week, and that will be in part thanks to the movement that Gabby has helped to build and the action of the House of Representatives. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to call up Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to Giffords, all of you for being here, bringing us together at this critical, really historic moment, a moment of opportunity that we must seize. Now, I want to begin with a story about Gabby Giffords. In the days after Sandy Hook, and it was the beginning of the time that Chris Murphy and I worked together as a team, and in the 10 years since, in those first days, literally 24, 48 hours, Gabby Giffords came to Connecticut. She came to Newtown. She came to one of the homes of relatives who lost loved ones. No cameras, no reporters, no public attention. Gabby Giffords came there to give heart and hope to those families that gathered, their lives broken. Literally, most of them still raw with the tears and the grief of that moment. And Gabby Giffords, by her presence, by her words, by the force of her personal story, gave them heart and hope, and they have been champions. The Sandy Hook survivors and families have been champions of gun violence prevention. And I want to pay tribute today to all of the survivors who continue to come forward, continue to relive their stories of horror and heartbreak. And Gabby Giffords gives them, all of them, the role model and the mentor and the example of personal courage, grace under pressure, that inspires us all. So if you take nothing else away from today, it is her message: fight, fight, fight. Never, ever give up. And we know, and I'll be very blunt, we know that the gun lobby is still out there. They are continuing to intimidate and threaten our colleagues. Republicans have yet to stand up to them. We still have an uphill battle, but we are determined to seize this moment and save lives, because we have a responsibility to the American people and to our own conscience. And you have created the movement. Giffords, all of these organizations have changed the political face of America in these 10 years. I've seen it happen. We were crying in the wilderness 10 years ago. You have changed the political dynamic and landscape, and Gabby Giffords has been our leader. And now we need to fulfill the promise of this moment. Not with window dressing or face saving, not with checking the box, but with real and meaningful action. And if we can do it on red flag laws and improving the background check system, and yes, mental health, school security, why not raise the age that's required to purchase guns? Seems to make such simple sense. All of these measures are common sense, sensible measures. And I've been privileged to partner with many of the House colleagues who are here today, Debbie Wasserman Schultz on background checks for ammunition, Adam Schiff for repeal of PLCA, the sweetheart deal that gives gun manufacturers absolute immunity. We need to continue to be angry and unsatisfied, because if we reach a compromise, and I'm very clear-eyed about the uphill battle and the work still to be done, but if we manage to reach an agreement, we will still have work to do. We will still have a lot of work to do on these common sense measures, and we will continue to be in this fight. So I want to thank you for being here today, but more important, for your continuing struggle. And it will be a struggle, and especially to those survivors who are here, because it is painful, it is grief-stricken, but it matters. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This time I would like to call up Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for doing your job as usual. This week, as you show the Senate what you can do when you got a majority and you can pass things. And she has just been unbelievable standing with her members. I want to thank Gabby, because whenever I get down about this fight, whenever I see those little girls' pictures with their communion dresses from Uvalde, when I see the little green tennis shoes that that girl wore every single day, when I see the sports uniforms of the little boys, I think about Gabby, because Gabby never gave up when she faced an unimaginable tragedy. She just kept going and ended up back in the House floor leading this effort. So these flowers out there, to me, every one of them is someone that someone loved. But in the end, those flowers are the grace of Gabby Giffords that we cannot forget. So we have 20-some empty beds in Texas, 10 empty chairs at the dinner tables in Buffalo, including a guy that went to the grocery store just to buy his son a birthday cake and never came home. That's what this is about. So when the speaker talks about mustering the courage our colleagues must muster, I just don't think it should be that hard. Time and time again, we've seen this happen, and we know what the solutions are because we've seen them work in certain states, and we've certainly seen them work in other countries. So how can anyone go home and explain why an 18-year-old can't get a drink, but he can go and order an AR-15 off of the internet after he gets targeted from a company with an ad destined for him? How can anyone explain that? And so I think we have gotten to the point where you look at the numbers, 70, 80% of the public with us on that, or our colleagues can no longer walk. And that is why they're working with Chris and Dick. That's why we're working to get this done. So number one, I'm for an assault weapon ban, okay? I think you're not surprised by that. But 18 to 21 would be a major game changer in a lot of these shootings. Number two, doing something about the new technology, the ghost guns, doing something with Lucy's bill on the extreme risk orders, knowing that that has worked and bringing that out across the country, closing the boyfriend loophole, which thanks to the speaker's leadership, they actually passed in the House with, wait, get this, 29 Republican votes voted for the Violence Against Women Act. Then it got stripped out in the Senate. I'm not going to go into it. I won't. Moving forward, we're moving forward, but this is an opportunity to close that loophole, as we know the number of deaths that result in domestic violence cases. Background checks. I went to the White House after Parkland, sat right across from Donald Trump, and listened and I still have the piece of paper where I put the hash marks, where 9 times he said he was for background checks. And then the next day he went and he met with the NRA and he changed his mind. Well, the public is onto this time. They've seen those kids. They know what's happening in their state. As noted, 13 shootings over just this weekend. Enough is enough. The Senate must act. They're going home. They're hearing from their constituents, thanks to all of you. And that is the game. Because the speaker, as I said, she's going to do her job. These guys are going to do their job. And then all eyes are on the U.S. Senate. So if you're going to make a phone call, make 100. If you're going to knock on a door, do more. Just keep doing this. And we'll get what we can done with these guys. And then we march right to the ballot box because the people are with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. At this time, I would love to call up Representative Lucy McBath.
Well, first I want to say thank you to Speaker Pelosi for her vigilance. And as she says over and over and over again, we are trying to pass these laws for safer communities for the children. For the children. For the children. Yes. And to Gabby Giffords, my friend, she has more courage and fortitude than any survivor that I know. And I am so grateful to be here with her, fighting on the front lines, as all of you are here, knowing and understanding that we have an expansive gun culture that no one is immune from, and that it's our responsibility as Americans to make sure that everyone in this country can live freely, unfettered by unnecessary gun violence. It's bittersweet to return to this memorial again this year with you both after another year of senseless gun violence tragedies. Another year of collective grief. And I thank all of my colleagues in both chambers and the community leaders that are standing with us today, and all of the gun violence survivors, and all of you that are on the ground building the movement for safer communities. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being in this fight to save lives. It is truly heartbreaking to again be reminded of this memorial's painful symbolism. These 45,000 roses add up to represent this year's haunting death toll of our uniquely American epidemic of gun violence. 10 grocery store shoppers in Buffalo, 19 children and 2 teachers in Uvalde, 3 doctors and a medical companion in Tulsa. For the first time ever, guns are the leading cause of death for our children in America. The numbers are absolutely staggering. We are paying for the price of gun violence every day in our communities. We are paying for the weapons of war on our streets with the blood of our children sitting in their classrooms. We are paying for unfettered gun access with mothers and fathers waiting in line for a DNA test, forced to find out if the massacre inside the school claimed their child. An entire generation of children is learning that the adults they look up to cannot or absolutely refuse to protect them. Who are we as a nation if we don't protect the least of these? Who are we as a nation if we don't protect our most vulnerable? Who are we as a nation if we do not, for the life of God, protect our children? We all agree that the status quo is absolutely unacceptable. And we all understand that the murder of our children cannot continue. And I have faith with every one of you that's here today. I have faith in the promise of a better tomorrow, a better America, because we are definitely better than this. I have faith in the power that we have as a people to make change in our world and to make our nation brighter and better and a more humanitarian nation. And above all, to make it stronger. It's that faith that has motivated me each and every single day that I get out of bed, nearly for a decade now, since my son Jordan was taken from me from unnecessary gun violence simply for playing loud music in his car. A future with improved background checks and red flag laws like the one that I introduced and that we will be voting on this week. All of these measures we'll be voting on this critical, vital, important week. A future that keeps guns out of the hands of those who should not have them. A future that keeps our children alive and thriving. It's a future that is entirely possible. Yes, it is possible. It's one that we can build, and it's one that I intend to spend the rest of my life fighting for. Because this ever-growing club of violence of survivors like myself and many that are standing in the crowd today, and with Gabby, so many of us here today, there are too many members of us in this club. Too many lives lost to unnecessary gun violence. We cannot wait another moment. We cannot wait for the Senate to act. They must act now. Lives depend on it each and every moment. Who are we as Americans if we do not act? Thank each and every one of you for finding it important to be here today to memorialize all those that we have lost and all those that we will continue to lose if we do not stand up, if we do not fight the NRA gun lobby, if we do not find it important to save our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. At this time, I'd like to call up Representative Robin Kelly.
Good morning, and thank you so much. I, too, would like to thank Speaker Pelosi for her courage, her bravery, and her boldness, and for always leading the House in the right direction. I also want to thank Senators Murphy, Klobuchar, and Blumenthal, because I know it cannot be easy in your shoes, but you have not given up the fight. And I want to thank Gabby and Lucy and survivors in the audience, because you don't have to do this. You can go on with your life, but you're being so selfless, and you're sharing your stories, and you're fighting with us, and you're showing your courage and bravery. So I just want to give a hand to all the survivors in the audience, and thank you so much. Gun shootings in America, it's no secret, it's an epidemic. From the shootings that have impacted Buffalo, Chattanooga, Philadelphia this past week, to the daily gun violence impacting cities such as Chicago, where I represent. Memorial weekend, 43 people were shot in Chicago. Last weekend, 33 people were shot in Chicago. When, tell me when, is enough enough? How many have to die, or who is it, before we truly take action, before we get this done? I have been working since my first day in Congress and before to pass gun safety legislation. And I'm encouraged that we're taking action to combat gun violence when the House votes this week on the various bills. But don't be fooled. It's not just us. It's not going to take just us. We need all of you in the fight. We need you to call your senators and your House members to let them know that you are watching. You are watching, and what you see will influence what you do at the polls. Not telling you who to vote for, but what you see will influence what you do at the polls. And please, I hope some of you are from some of those red states, because we need your help there. We need your help there. I have a bill, my Prevent Gun Trafficking Act, which is included in the Protecting Our Kids Act, because you often hear Chicago has the toughest gun laws, but look what happens there. Well, over 60% of our crime guns come from Indiana and Wisconsin. And since I've been in Congress, the laws in Indiana and Wisconsin have gotten easier to buy a gun. And those of us that live in Illinois and live in Chicago, we are paying the price with our lives. So we have to get these bills passed. The Senate has to do their part. We don't want them to be the place where bills go to die. Also, we have to get the director of the ATF in place, because there has not been leadership there, and that is extremely, extremely important. Finally, Democrats in the House must continue to work for the American people and look at what other bills can help end gun violence. It's not just the bills we're talking about now, but we need bills that work with intervention and prevention. Like we have a bill with Stephen Horsford and Senator Cory Booker that was in Build Back Better that we couldn't get passed. But we have to pass the Breaking the Cycle of Violence Act so that our kids pick up hobbies and new lessons and job skills and not pick up guns. And in all of this, we have to think about our teachers. They go to work to teach, not to worry about losing their lives. We have to think about cashiers in a grocery store, or people that do hair in a salon, or people going to watch a movie. That's our right also. It's not just about, I'm not against the Second Amendment, but also I have a right to play in a park, the right to ride on a bus, the right to go to a movie, and we have to protect these rights. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative. At this time, I'd like to call up Senator Schumer.
Well, thank you very much. I want to thank Gabby Giffords and the Giffords organization for putting this event together and having all of us here, the broad panoply of people who support gun safety. Now, many of us here have spent years, decades, on gun violence. I'm the author of the Brady Law. There are tens of thousands of people living today. They don't know who they are because that law was passed. I put the assault weapons bill through the floor of the House as well. This was in 1994. And it's amazing how little progress we have made since then. The power of the NRA is just unbelievable. But guess what? We have the people behind us. We have right behind us. We have the momentum behind us as well, and we will prevail. My father passed away in November. He's still here. And here's what he taught me. He taught me two things: help people who need help. But the second thing he taught me is, if you're doing the right thing and you persist, God will make sure you succeed. Yes. We are doing the right thing. Are we going to persist? Yes. And are we going to win? Yes. We will. We will. The pictures, this is such a powerful sight, and I'm sure it's been said before, but when you think of the families, the friends, the communities that are grieving because each of these flowers is planted, because a life has been taken away from us unnecessarily, and you see the increase in gun violence in the orange flowers behind us, you know that this is an issue where we can't just say the status quo is okay. I was in Buffalo right after the shooting. I met a 3-year-old little boy, a beautiful little boy. His father had said, I'm going over to the top supermarket to buy you a birthday cake. His father never came back because he was black and at a supermarket. That was it. That was the reason he was shot. That little boy, that whole family, all of their friends will live with that the rest of their lives, as will the whole community of East Buffalo. And then in Uvalde, to see the pictures. I was not there, but you see a little boy with a trophy, 10-year-old, a 9-year-old with a sweatshirt proudly talking about what she believed in. And every one of us who has had kids has experienced those moments when our kids come home with those trophies or wear those t-shirts, and these kids are just gone. It's just, it defies words. It defies words. So I can't get out of my mind these people who have been lost, but there are so many others who were lost who all of these flowers represent, who we're not even knowing and seeing, but they and their families live with it every day. On Mother's Day, I met with 50 women, all dressed in white, all of whom had lost children to gun violence. And they were trying to reclaim their place in society. It was a powerful and an amazing experience, and all they said to me is, get something done. Get something done. This year already, as the orange flowers symbolize, we have had 250 mass shootings. We've only had 150 some odd days this year. That means more than one mass shooting each day. We hear of some of them, we don't hear of most of them. But the people who are victims, and the families of victims, and the friends of victims have all heard about them and will hear about them the rest of their lives. So I want to thank my colleagues. I want to thank Senator Murphy, who has been such an outstanding leader on this, Senator Blumenthal, who's working so hard on red flags, Senator Klobuchar, who has been one of our mainstays on this issue, and all of our House members who are here as well. As Majority Leader, I made clear that the Senate will vote on gun safety legislation in the near future. Senate Democrats, led by the groups, including this group, your message to us is get something done. Get something done. We know we won't get all of it done at once, but get something done. And Senator Murphy has asked me to give him a little time. He's working very closely with some of the senators here and others, and we are giving him some time. And we know in the proposal that they have, because so many of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle are unwilling to go forward, will not have everything we want. But that will only be the beginning. We know that the push for gun safety will continue, for universal background checks, for a ban on assault weapons, and tough red flag laws and so many other things will continue even after these rounds of discussions have terminated. But we're going to get something passed through this chamber as long as it will make a tangible difference in gun violence. Who do we owe it to? We owe it to America's parents. We owe it to America's kids. We owe it to every person now who is worried as they see somebody, as they walk down the street or walk at a train station or an airport or take their kids to school, that they won't be next. All of America is thinking of that now, because these rounds of gun violence have been so frequent and so deadly. We're under no illusion that what we want to do remains a tall order. We know that so many on the other side of the aisle have their heads in the sand and are unwilling to do what 90% of America wants them to do. But we are going to persist. And we are going to persist until we succeed, until we don't see any more pictures of 10-year-olds with trophies. We don't hear any more stories of 3-year-olds whose father was shot down in a store because he was black. We don't hear stories from all of our communities that people are still afraid because gun violence is so rampant. We will fight until that is over, O-V-E-R. Not half over, not three-quarters over, but over. So let me thank once again, the Giffords organization and Gabby for her tremendous strength and courage. Let me thank all of you who are fighting so hard to make sure we get something done here. And let me thank the American people who are calling minute by minute their senators, their congressmen, their representatives, and say, just get something done. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I love that. We are going to persist. All right. Hope everyone's doing okay. At this time, I'd like to call up Representative Wasserman Schultz.
Thank you very much. It is seared into my memory the day that I got the call that one of my dearest friends, Gabby Giffords, had been shot. And there were hours that we actually thought she had not made it. The panic that gripped my heart, the grief, and then the relief that she was alive, and then the aftermath of the months and months that I watched her fight and kick and scratch and use that classic Gabby Giffords resolve to make sure that she could not only survive but thrive once again and live to lead the way on combating gun violence. Now, what kind of a friend would I be if I didn't let you all know that tomorrow is Gabby's birthday? So let's make sure that this week we give her one of the best birthday gifts that I know that she could receive, and that is pass meaningful gun violence legislation so that we can make sure it's signed into law and that we can save more lives. And as someone who has been a safety advocate, the cornerstone of my own legislative career for my whole legislative career has been keeping children safe. I know that you'll never know how many lives you save by the legislation that you pass, the laws that put obstacles in the path of someone who would cause harm, either through intentional or accidental harm. But we know that lives are saved. I want to share with you what I went through yesterday. Yesterday, I stood with high school kids from my children's high school alma mater in my hometown to acknowledge those students' accomplishment of raising money to fund Stop the Bleed kits to be put in every classroom in our high school. Parkland, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School being right up the road from our community, and the wrapping my mind around the fact that our kids in high schools are having to form clubs to make sure that their schools are safe, led by a parent, Lori Alhadeff, who lost her daughter, Alyssa, in the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting. But the fact that kids are having to form clubs to raise money to keep themselves safe and to stop them from bleeding out. If, God forbid, a mass shooting occurs in their high school, instead of selling cupcakes and standing on the street corner to lure neighbors into car washes so that they can make sure they can pay for a fun prom. That is what it has come to in 2022. It's come to standing in front of a lawn full of thousands of white and orange roses that represent dead children and dead human beings. It doesn't have to be this way. And I'll tell you, it is possible for us to pass gun violence reform. If there's any state in America, Florida would be the one that would be the biggest challenge. But after Parkland, our Republican majority legislature, pushed by families from Parkland and from communities across our state, made sure that we raised the age from 18 to 21 that you could purchase a gun, made sure that you had at least a 3-day waiting period before you could purchase a gun, passed those extreme risk protection orders, otherwise known as red flag laws. Laws, not incentives, but laws, to make sure that we could remove guns from people who would do others or themselves harm. If you could pass that in the state of Florida, you can pass it anywhere. And we have to make sure that we give you the resolve, give the parents and the communities across this country the resolve to continue to push us. That's why legislation that we are going to have in our package this week is going to continue to put pressure on the United States Senate to at least do something. We're legislators. As legislators, we delight in incremental change. We have to, or we would all crack up. But I'm here to tell you, and I'll close with this, and Senator Blumenthal is still here, and I want to thank him for being the Senate lead, as I am on the House side, to pass Jamie's Law. Because one of those common sense things we can do, raise your hand if you already knew that ammunition is illegal to purchase if you are already a prohibited purchaser, a convicted felon, a domestic violence abuser, or adjudicated mentally ill. Did you know? Raise your hand if you knew that it's illegal to purchase ammunition. If you are in one of those categories, there are very few hands raised. You know what? It's illegal, and we don't check. There's no background check if you're to catch whether you're a prohibited purchaser. So we need to pass Jamie's Law to just add a simple background check to make sure that someone who shouldn't have a gun and maybe can't get it because they're a convicted felon or in one of those categories also can't purchase thousands of rounds of ammunition with no questions asked. That's unacceptable, and we have to stop that. And I'm just thankful that my friend Gabby Giffords had the courage that she always had before her own tragedy, and that we are led by her every single day. And she helps give us the resolve to keep going. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative. I'd love to call up Representative Cicilline.
Good morning. I am really delighted to be here. First, to see and be with Gabby Giffords again, who I had the privilege of serving with, and to thank her and Giffords for being such extraordinary leaders in this movement, and to thank in particular my colleague Lucy McBath, who every single day in the Judiciary Committee reminds us of why this fight is so critical, and surrounded by so many other colleagues. And I thank our Senate leaders who are here. And I want to just make a couple of points. One is, you know the numbers. We have a gun violence epidemic in America. Guns are now the leading cause of death for American kids. Let that sink in. The leading cause of death. More than 200 mass shootings this year alone, 27 school shootings this year alone, 45,000 families whose lives have been destroyed because of gun violence, being symbolized by these flowers here today. And sometimes we lose sight because these numbers are so enormous. We should recognize that those who have survived gun violence or lost a loved one to gun violence, like Lucy or like Gabby or like so many who are here today, every time we have one of these gatherings to advocate for this, those families relive their experiences of getting that phone call, of identifying the body of a child, and all of the horrors that come from this gun violence. And so I think it is hardest to explain to anyone. I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Judiciary Committee. When I travel, inevitably, in every meeting with foreign leaders, they say, what is going on in America with guns? Why can't you fix this? Because great democracies can solve big problems. And to the young people who are part of this movement, I want to apologize to you. You should not have to be here. You should not have to be at a rally. You should not be demanding that you be able to go to school and be safe. That's on the adults. That's our responsibility, and we have failed you. But we have moved 2 really good bills to the Senate. We're going to move more this week, and it's on our Senate colleagues, particularly our Senate Republicans, who are blocking even universal criminal background checks, supported by 95% of the American people. Something is wrong. And by the way, it's not just the power of the gun lobby. It's the weakness of our elected officials who are willing to do the right thing to protect the lives of the constituents they serve. It's on the Republicans who are blocking this in the Senate. So I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for what you are doing. We need to change the paradigm in America. So no longer can elected officials say, oh, I'm worried. Politically, this might hurt me. It has to be the reverse. It has to be politically, you will not survive if you don't stand up and advance gun safety legislation in this country. That's the political risk, and you're helping change that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. At this time, Representative Escobar.
Buenos dias, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I want to give a special shout out to the physicians, the moms, the kids, the gun owners, the Giffords participants. Thank you all for being here to put pressure on all of us. And I'm going to give a few words in Spanish for our Spanish language media. Les quiero dar las gracias a todos que están luchando con nosotros para evitar la tragedia que hemos visto en El Paso, en Uvalde, en otras comunidades. No tenemos que vivir y morir así en los Estados Unidos. Podemos cambiar las cosas si tenemos la habilidad de llorar por nuestros niños, por nuestros maestros, por nuestros papás. Ya es hora de cambiar las cosas, y especialmente en el Senado. Tenemos colegas que no quieren cambiar las cosas, y por eso estamos aquí, para ponerle presión a cada persona que no quiere participar en ser parte de la solución. 23 vases here on this mall are here for El Paso, Texas. In August of 2019, August 3rd of 2019, a white supremacist, a domestic terrorist, drove over 10 hours to my community to slaughter people at a Walmart who are Mexican or who he believed are immigrants, in a racially motivated killing, not unlike what happened in Buffalo. And there weren't just 23 people who were slaughtered. There have been dozens of people who were injured who still today have to go through physical therapy, have to have surgeries, have medical bills as a result of that. And the entire community was devastated. And so this week, the House of Representatives is going to take action. And we will be taking action on a number of bills. 4 of those bills would have addressed the last 4 mass shootings in Texas, in Midland, in Santa Fe, in El Paso, in Uvalde, raising the age from 18 to 21, ensuring safe storage to avoid children getting into guns, background checks, and red flag laws. We know what it takes to change things. We know it. Those 23 people in El Paso didn't have to die. And let me tell you, my friends, it is no longer a question of if this kind of carnage will come to your community. It's a matter of when it will come to your community unless we act. So we will take action in the House. And Senator, thank you for being here. Thank you for your leadership. And it was great to see the Senate Majority Leader and Senators Klobuchar and Murphy here. But I do want to say, please don't give us a fig leaf. Please don't give us a fig leaf. Because let me tell you, it wasn't, in El Paso, it wasn't the mental health, it was the hate. And in El Paso, it wasn't the school, it was the grocery store. In other communities, it's the hospitals, it's the outdoor concert venues, you name it. Every person in this country is vulnerable. And no, it's not the doors, it's the guns. It's the guns. So the answers are clear. It is on us. This week, the House will act, and we need to keep the pressure on the Senate. And let me tell you, I know we're not supposed to be political, but you need to hold us accountable. And whoever doesn't vote for safety in America around guns, November is coming. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, thank you. Definitely stay hydrated. I see some folks passing out water. It's hot out here. We want to make sure everyone's okay. And thank you for your patience. Would love to call up Representative Garamendi.
Thank you. When actually occurred in my Senate district in California in 1989 at the Cleveland Elementary School. An assault weapon, 5 dead, more than 30 injured. An AK-47. At the hospital the next day, a grieving family hoping that their child would survive. A refugee from Laos. And they asked, how could this happen in America? We came here to be safe. So in answer to Ms. Escobar's question, when has been with us a long time. Gabby Giffords, wisdom, tenacity, courage, determination, all of those and more. 435 of us have been elected by Americans to solve a critical national problem. Wisdom, determination, courage, we need that now. We just need the very same courage of those children and that teacher in Uvalde as they fought for their lives. And the courage today. Do we have it? It's blowing in the wind, my friends. It's blowing in the wind. We'll see. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. All right, so we have just heard from all of our elected officials, our senators, our representatives, and we really want to thank them for making time for us today despite their extremely busy schedules. So I'd love to just do another round of applause for all the representatives that spoke today. All right, at this time, I'm going to introduce you all to a slew of amazing speakers, activists, you know, folks that work in the movement, folks that work outside of the movement that are inextricably linked to gun violence. So I would love to call up Greg Jackson, the Executive Director of Community Justice Action Fund. Greg, are you here? It's coming up.
All right, good morning. Good morning. All right, thank you. I can always count on DC. So I'm Greg Jackson. I'm the Executive Director for the Community Justice Action Fund. We're an organization committed to ending gun violence in Black and brown communities. But I'm also here as a survivor of gun violence. And for too many of our communities, memorials aren't as beautiful as this. You know, on my corner, there was a young woman who was shot on a corner store on 16th Street. In her memorial is 6 bullet wounds in that corner store, 6 bullet holes. When we were in Buffalo, when you look at everything surrounding Top Supermarket, their memorial were flowers, balloons for those who have been lost, for grandmothers that have been lost. And since I was shot in 2013, every year we've seen 100,000 people shot or killed by gun violence like this. And so that means nearly 1 million people have been lost or directly impacted by gun violence. And those are more than just stats. Those are real people from our community. People like Karan Brown, who from my neighborhood and was part of a mentorship program I was a part of, lost his life days after organizing his own Stop the Violence event with the Boys Institute. Like Pearl Young, 77 years old in Buffalo, who was a former first lady of her church and gunned down by an assault rifle. Like Micaiah Wilson, who was shot while simply getting ice cream in her neighborhood and lost forever. And Pamela Thomas, who was so afraid of violence in her neighborhood here in Northeast DC that she wrote her own eulogy before being shot and killed in front of her son Rufus. These flowers do not represent numbers or stats. They represent real people, real lives, and real trauma in our communities every day. And what I will say is that the communities are resilient. We have leaders behind me, leaders to the left of me, that are fighting every single day to do this hard work to save lives and putting their lives on the line every single day. People like Dante Barksdale in Baltimore, who devoted his entire life to doing violence intervention work, underpaid, overworked, and unfortunately lost his life to gun violence while trying to intervene in conflict. We know that our communities have the leaders that are doing the work. We have the organizations that are doing the work. We have the city leaders that are doing the work. What we don't have are the resources and the policy needed to address violence effectively. And that's why we need Congress to take action. We need bills like the Prevent Gun Trafficking Act to make sure that guns are not being flooded into vulnerable neighborhoods and communities like those in Northeast and Southeast DC. We need the Break the Cycle of Violence Act that would invest $6.5 billion into violence intervention and prevention programs. And we need Congress to take the courage to act to pass the Protect Our Kids Act package. So we're standing here as community leaders, as activists, but most importantly, the people that are doing the real work every day. And all we're asking of Congress right now is to do their job and support the people who are fighting hard every single day. So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing Congress taking action this week.
Thank you, Greg. I'd love to call up the president of the American Federation of Teachers, Randy Weingarten.
So everyone has spoken so eloquently and from the heart about what we need and what we want and what we demand and what we cry for and what we press for. There's anger, there's sadness, there's sorrow. There's a sense of resilience and persistence. And these activists behind me, they're never going to stop. Thank God. And in their name, we remember those who died, including teachers, kids. 3 of my members died in Buffalo, murdered in Buffalo. The doctors in Tulsa, the kids and teachers in Uvalde, the grocery store goers in Buffalo, and then countless others whose names we don't know right now, but their families do. Guns and hate create violence. In lots of other places in the world, there's hate. But because of the laws that have been passed, there's not the mass shootings that we have here. No one is talking about the Second Amendment. No one is calling for us doing any violence to the Second Amendment. What we are calling for is gun safety. When we called for airline safety, everyone came on board. When we called for motor vehicle safety, people came on board. When we called for tobacco safety and alcohol safety, why can't we have safety when it comes to guns? Why can't people's lives be more important? There are things we can do. There are things we can do. We're all doing our jobs. Becky's members, my members. Every activist is doing his, her, or their jobs. I'll end with this. I was in Buffalo last week and at the Topps Memorial before we were about to do a community rally, and a young woman with her daughter with chalk in hand just wrote, "Do something." Yes, of course we will hold people accountable if they don't. But it would be much better for our democracy, in the names of those who have perished through murder through guns, if we, as America, did something now.
Thank you, Randy. Fired up. I'm excited. At this time, I would love to call up Tia Bell, the CEO of the Trigger Project.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Gun Violence Awareness Month, not because of the joy that is absent when we lose as survivors, but because we have an opportunity as survivors to bring together and become true fellowship and display power and loss in a way that brings us essence and grace and tragedy that we don't get to do a lot. So I just start today as a survivor, as a founder of a nonprofit organization aiming to prevent gun violence, with gratitude for everyone, with the courage you used today to show up. I want to acknowledge that because we're pushing policy, we're pushing laws, we're standing here together, but it is very hard to wake up and get up and do what we do, being if you're on one side of the camera or the other. So I just want to start with gratitude for Giffords and for the fellowship of all of us survivors. Please give yourselves a hug for me. I've used a lot of my 2 minutes just to explain that and bring that, but I want to share that as the founder, I'm 6'4", so I want you guys to hear me, but I'm the founder of the Trigger Project. It's the True Reasons I Grabbed the Gun Evolved from Risk project. It started in 2019. I was a survivor like Gregory. My mom got shot in her left leg when I was just 10 years old. And between almost losing my mother at 10 and then losing my uncle at 17, I lost more friends than I can count. So I stand here today, of course, in again, fellowship with Push for gun safety and gun sense, but I ask and beg of you that you think about the many people that are just 2 miles down the road that are suffering from the spread of gun violence. Here at the Trigger Project, we look at gun violence as a disease. The CDC studies gun violence as a disease because it spreads through modeled behavior. So there are true reasons I grabbed the gun that evolved from risk like high emotional distress, despair, lack of opportunity, support, and services. So we need the resources, we need the funding, because we're going to keep doing the work, but we need to last. So that hopefully in 20 years when my newborn son is finishing college or finishing whatever endeavor he wants to pursue at that young age, he can be in a safe world. I thank you. I ask that you guys push to invest in prevention. We have the many gun policy laws for safety, the many gun policy laws enact, again, for intervention, but prevention is the absence of disease. I ask that you guys invest. I thank you again for your time, your courage as survivors, and my condolences. Bless you.
Thank you, Tia. Would love to call up Chris Brown, the president of Brady.
Morning, everyone. My name is Chris Brown. I'm the president of Brady. And I just want to say thank you to Giffords for hosting this event, for giving us a platform, all of us in the gun violence prevention movement, all of the survivors that I see, and all of you, thank you for joining us today, because we're on the right side of history. I hope all of America is paying attention, because we collectively, all of us, have had enough. We, as parents, as children, as mothers, daughters, nephews, nieces, look every day and wonder, are we safe? Can we walk down the street? Can we go to the movies? Can we go to school? Can we shop at our grocery store and be safe and not be targeted by a combination of hate and complete ease in accessing guns in this country? It's hard for me to reflect on how many horrific things all of us have been witnessing over the last couple of weeks, in particular on the news, about the impact of gun violence. For many of you here today, you know that well, deeply, and personally. One that sticks with me the most as a mother of an 18 and 20-year-old is a conversation that a mother in Uvalde had with her daughter, terrified after being in the school, obviously grateful to have survived. She asked her mother, "Mommy, what picture will you show of me when I'm shot at school?" Just let that sit for a minute and understand that the trauma we are inflicting on our children is horrific. And the thing, as the president of Brady, that upsets me the most is that it is absolutely preventable, because laws work. Laws actually work. And I don't have to say that in a hypothetical way. I know it, because Jim and Sarah Brady passed the Brady background check system. And it's been in effect for more than a quarter century. And guess how many gun purchases have been stopped by that law? Over 4 million and counting. More than 600 every single day are stopped. And you know what is the most upsetting part of this? That still 1 in 5 guns is sold today with no background check at all. And the answer is very simple. It's sitting in the Senate. And it has been for over a year. It's called H.R. 8. And it stands for a very simple proposition that I think is very important for every single American, you all know, but every person listening to understand. When the Brady Law was enacted in 1993, it was before something called the internet was invented. It's before gun shows were big business, and today they are. As a result, private sellers, not technically subject to the Brady Law, because they weren't around in big number at the time, can sell guns with no background check at all. And people are dying every day because of this. That's what's at stake. And let me just say something, I think, about the Second Amendment here. What we're talking about with the Brady Law and all of these bills that the House is marking up is our public safety. It is about whether we live or die. It's about our right, constitutional rights, enshrined by John Locke and forward, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. No American wants a version of the Second Amendment that is an insurrectionist version that swallows every other basic right, including the most fundamental right to live. So I ask members of the United States Senate, because the House has done their job. We have a few members in the United States Senate that belong to one party that say things after Uvalde like, oh, it's about the doors. And they somehow are using talking points from the National Rifle Association that haven't been updated since the last slaughter at schools. But I think Americans are fed up, don't you? I think Americans want change, and I stand with all of these amazing organizations, with all of you activists. We are strong, we are mighty, we are standing for justice, we are standing for saving lives. We want the Senate to act. Yes, please confirm Steve Dettelbeck to be the head of ATF. Put a law enforcement agent at the top of that agency, and the Biden administration needs to continue to do all it is doing already to fill any gaps in the law. Let's make that happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Joanna and Ikea Hardy from Guns Down Friday.
How y'all doing today? Look, let's take a moment. That big bang, gun violence really traumatizes us because that bang just sent us all, woo. So how y'all doing again? I'm a little nervous. I'm in the streets a lot. I don't really do stuff like this. So, yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miss Hardy, and I am the founder of Guns Down Friday. I want to first give honor and show love to every family under the sound of my voice that has lost a loved one to gun violence. Due to gun violence, we have lost little babies, children, students, mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, friends and neighbors. I would also like to show love and honor to our community activists, law enforcement, and active elected officials that are creating change in our community and world. Today we are here because America wants change. While mass shootings capture most media attention, 100 people are killed by guns in America every day in preventable gun suicide, domestic violence, and community violence. Today we are here not asking for change, but demanding. In my community, we are discriminated on even after death. In the eyes of the law, black lives are devalued even after death. 2 years ago, Councilmember Trayon White introduced a bill aimed changing the way the legal system values wrongful death lawsuits linked to black victims, called the Stormaya Bill. A bill that says all lives are equal, even after death. No matter the race or gender. This bill has yet to be passed, alongside with so many other bills, programs, fundings, sitting idle because Congress chooses to do nothing. Congress, the time is now. Can y'all say it with me? The time is now. I can't hear y'all. The time is now. Thank you. Guns Down Friday, guns down in our home streets and communities.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Ikea Hardy and I am the Executive Director of Women in Heels. I joined Joanna as the frontline staff in our city aimed towards reducing gun violence. I particularly work with women and youth girls just to provide them resources so that they are less likely to be involved in any gun violence activity. As the frontline staff, this job is not easy. It's very hard on our mental, and a lot goes into this that we don't get to talk about often because of the work that we do and the what goes into it. So I just wanted to take this time to say that we need more resources and more aid, more funding in our fight to reduce gun violence right here in our own city. And so that's all I have. Thank you for this opportunity and this platform, and I look forward to continue to do the work. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you both. Dr. Joseph Saccharin from This Is Our Lane.
Well, good morning. It's great to be here, and I want to thank Giffords for putting together this event. Look, I come to this conversation both as a survivor of gun violence and someone who's a trauma surgeon in Baltimore. And every day we face the horrific reality of gun violence in America. You know, I'm grateful to be surrounded by so many friends and activists and survivors, but the fact that we're here means that we are here at the cost of people's lives. And I'll tell you what, as we stand on the heels of Uvalde, where children were massacred at school, and Buffalo, where you had a person that massacred a black community, as you've heard earlier, these mass shootings that get the attention of the media and the public are less than 2% of the public health problem we face. And in fact, in cities like Baltimore, where I work, every day, like last night when I was on call, we have young black men, we have pregnant moms, we have high school students that are being slaughtered on our streets. And we have the responsibility to tell those stories. You know, when you think about what's happening in America, we continue to wake up day after day with these senseless tragedies. And of course, these flowers that represent those that have died are so significant. We always talk about the death. But don't forget that for every one of these deaths, there are about 2 to 3 non-fatal injuries. And it's not just the physical trauma. It's also the mental and the emotional trauma. I mean, imagine this. A child in America took blood off of a dead classmate and rubbed it on herself in hopes that if the gunman came back, he would think she was dead. That's happening in America now. We should be ashamed. This is unacceptable. I love my job. I love what I do. But the best medical treatment is prevention. And I can't tell you the worst part of my job is having to go out and to talk to these moms and dads and explain to them that their child that left that morning is never coming home again. There's no more birthdays or graduations. They're just left with simply the picture of their child on that wall. We can't accept that. We must not accept that. And you want to know what? When you look at Americans, Americans are not divided. The majority of Americans want common sense legislation. We must demand that our Senate act, not one more moment. This is not a Democratic problem. It's not a Republican problem. It's a uniquely American problem. And I implore the Senate to act this week and not waste another moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Would love to call up Becky Pringle, the president of the National Education Association.
I wish I could shut up, but I can't, and I won't. Those words by Bishop Desmond Tutu capture the level of resolve and determination we must have in this moment. I am Becky Pringle, president of the National Education Association. I stand before you with the power and might of the 3 million members of the NEA, saying they will not shut up, they will not stop, they will not give in until Congress and the Senate do their jobs. We were joined today by those members of Congress and the Senate who have already done what they know is right for our students. But we have others who don't seem to care about these flowers behind us or the real lives that they represent. 23 years ago, in April of 1999, I was teaching middle school in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I had no experience or training to answer the questions of my middle-level learners when they asked me, are we safe in our schools? It's 23 years later, and here we are. The question that we must ask, is this who America is? Is it? Until we pass comprehensive, common sense gun laws, which the majority of Americans support, it is who we are. But we are here to say no more. This is not the America we are going to be anymore. We have activists standing behind us who are saying enough. Enough. We have people all over this country rising up and saying no more. We have our students. Our students are babies who are begging us to do what's right. We will rally, and we will organize, and we will vote, because our students, our babies, are depending on us to be worthy of them. I know we can do this. Can we do this? Can we do this? I know we can, and we will. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Becky. Would love to call up Wisdom Cole, the director of the NAACP's Youth and College Division.
Good morning. My name is Wisdom Cole, and I serve as the National Director for the NAACP Youth and College Division. I also come to you today as a former teacher and a survivor of a school shooting. Gun violence must end today because it impacts real lives. And one thing that I've learned over my 10 years of organizing and activism is that sometimes you don't have to be the voice for the voiceless. You just have to pass the mic. So I'd like y'all to welcome Mr. Derek Lewis from Texas.
Good morning. I greet you with a smile, but my heart is definitely broken. My name is Derek Lewis. I serve as the National Field Organizer for the Youth and College Division. I'm also from Lamarck, Texas, a small town in Texas right along the Gulf Coast. But within that small town that I call home, I always represent Lamarck, Texas, 409, Texas, Westside, Texas, G County, Texas, is that town and that community is filled and plagued with gun violence. I'm not here because I want to be here, but I'm here because I'm here on behalf of those lives that were taken away, of those who I know too well. Lil Pratt, Mike Parker, Rodney Stahl, Carlton Smith, Perry Preston, Jordan Boxley, Tavon Hubbard, Bria Lockett, and M. Deasy. Those lives who were taken too early, some weren't able to see 28, most of them weren't able to see 21. This is a result from easy access to guns and a lack of investment into youth, the community, or as I like to call it, we need the resources. We live in a society where the access is easier to get a gun than it is to cast your vote on a ballot box. Mass shooting after mass shooting, our society is not in the greatest health condition. Thoughts and prayers can only go so far. Doing the same thing and expecting a different result is insanity. We've been praying the same prayer since the 1990s. When are we going to move and understand that faith without work is dead? and we need action. The solution is policy. It's radical love to create a healthy society that is proactively protecting black people. Radical love that invests in youth in the future to ensure that they can be the future community leaders and the leaders of tomorrow and or today. Radical love that will put people over profit. So my ask is very simple. Is that we have real leaders who understand faith without works is dead, that no thoughts and prayers but policy, banning AR-15s, universal background checks, establishing domestic terrorists, yes, I said establishing a domestic terror list, and enforcing red flag laws. This has been enough bloodshed to act, and clearly to any elected official, and for those who have voting power, if they don't act, vote them out.
Thank you, Wisdom. Thank you, Derek. Would love to call up Angela Farrell-Zabala, the Senior Vice President for Movement Building at Everytown.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. It may be afternoon. Good afternoon if it is. As you've all heard today, this is our moment. Senators are negotiating gun safety legislation right now, and this is our best chance in a decade to get Congress to act and pass these laws that will save lives. We're here to talk about what's at stake. We're here to lift up the stories of survivors, and we're here for each other. Because showing up for each other is how we've made it this far as a gun violence prevention movement, and it's how we'll keep going, even when it's tough, and it's how we're going to make the future of our country safer. My name is Angela Farrell-Zabala, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Movement Building at Everytown for Gun Safety and Moms Demand Action. But above all, I'm a mother of 4. I'm a person of faith. I'm a resident of the District of Columbia, and I live in Ward 7, southeast of this city. Our organization, all together, have been working in partnership with Giffords and so many others that you've heard from today to do one simple thing: stop this gun violence epidemic. I want to extend my personal gratitude to survivors here today for sharing their stories, and for all those who have spoken today, and all those for showing up, and everyone across the country who's turning in on live stream. As I said, our moment is right now. Every day in this country, more than 110 people are killed with guns, and hundreds more are wounded. It simply doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to accept this as normal. The Senate needs to hear from us. That means wearing out our dial pads, recruiting our family and friends to do the same, and making sure that there isn't 1 second that our target senators' offices or that their phones aren't ringing off the hooks with one of us on the other end of the line. Already hundreds and thousands have sent messages and made calls to contact our senators within the last 2 weeks to tell them, do your jobs, take action, end this epidemic. When senators used to pick up their phones in their offices, it was the NRA calling, and now we're the ones calling, and we're demanding action, and we're demanding that they don't look away. That's how this movement is greater than the sum of its parts, because we show up and we represent the overwhelming majority of people in this country in saying enough is enough. Again, thank you to all for being with us today and for everything you've done to make this moment possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. We have a few more speakers, so I really just want to commend those of you that are still here. We really appreciate your attention to this very, very serious issue. I would love to call up now survivor and activist Charles King with Helping Others with Life.
Excuse me. Good morning. It's still morning. I'll start off by saying thank you to everyone who came out to support me and to support everyone with this event, especially the people from Building Blocks. I really appreciate y'all being here and being patient with the process. This is an organization here in D.C. that was founded by the executive office of the mayor that has a very large impact in the violence reduction here in Washington, D.C. My name is Charles King. I'm the founder of Helping Others with Life, which is a nonprofit organization here in Washington. And I am a violence intervention specialist with the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement under the executive office of the mayor here in D.C. I'm a gunshot survivor. I'll start by saying the word proactive. I say proactive because it's important in today's climate with gun violence. I support universal background checks. The president pledged to provide funding to help reduce violence in areas of violence intervention funding and several other ways that I support. Today we stand before a gun violence memorial with a total of 45,222 flowers representing lives lost to gun violence in 2020. In 2020, I experienced gun violence personally, as the mother of my son was a victim to gun violence that caused her death. She is represented today in this memorial of flowers. During my life, I have known gun violence victims, some fatal, some non-fatal. Now today I am on the front lines doing the work personally to help reduce gun violence by having a proactive approach. I personally know that if we can reduce the guns with some of the measures being asked upon today by the people here, we can reduce the number of deaths potentially. I stand before everyone here with everyone here to collectively help hopefully save some lives. I stand here hoping that our voices are heard so we don't have to experience another Buffalo or Texas incident. Before I end, I want to say together we stand, divided we fall, and thank you to the office of Ms. Giffords for the opportunity to be heard on this issue, and thank you to my son for being here with me today as I lend my voice on an issue that has affected us, impacted our lives both. Before I close, I just want to say thank you to everyone that does the work, the violence intervention work, because this is real work. We don't have the resources of the police department. Only thing we have is our word and our reputation and our credibility. And sometimes we can wind up being victims going into situations where there's a whole slew of violence going on. I live here in the Washington, D.C. area, and as you know, across the United States, the murder rate is rising drastically. The thing that I can say is I'm going to keep doing the work, and I know that those that's here that I see and that I acknowledge, I know that they're going to keep doing the work too. This isn't work to us. There's no amount of money that can compensate us for what we do on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles, and thank you for your patience. Would love to call up John Gold with Gun Owners for Safety.
Slaughter is too easy in this country, and it needs to stop. I've already been introduced, so I'm going to move forward. I was told today to make this personal, and I'll get there. But as a firearms instructor of over 2 decades, I know that my Second Amendment rights and supporting practical gun safety measures are not mutually exclusive. They are necessary, they are prudent, and they are urgent. I'm not your usual gun safety advocate, but I should be. I've taught marksmanship and pistol craft for over 2 decades. I've been the victim of gun violence, and I've lost 4 people close to me to firearm suicides in the last 6 years. I have scars to remind me, but gun violence leaves more than just scarred tissue. It leaves you with more than physical damage. It leaves you with holes in your heart that tear at your soul. There's usually a point in a lot of these speeches where we ask for a moment of silence to honor the victims. I was going to do that, but I'm not going to today. I'm going to ask you for something else. I'm going to ask you to never, ever be silent again. Tragedy is never positive, but if you have any questions about the need for our voices and why they need to be heard, You need to know that they've been answered not just since Columbine, not just by Sandy Hook, not just by Pulse, but by the deaths that have permeated and terrorized our American way of life since the 1970s, when semi-automatic weapons came home from Vietnam. Since gang violence permeated city streets and rural hills, and since open carry made it okay to intimidate and promote fear in Americas everywhere. Silence is what got us to a threat level where Buffalo shoppers are hunted in their grocery stores and Uvalde children are slaughtered in their schools. When I'm having problems, I use a line with my friends, I'm okay, but I'm not all right. Well, I'm not okay and I'm not all right. I'm a gun owner, I'm a firearms instructor, and I'm angry. I'm angry that our government once again offers prayers with mass slaughter in our streets, our stores, and our schools. I'm angry that the leading cause of death for children aged 0 to 19 is gunfire. I'm angry that irresponsible gun owners let 4 children die in 5 weeks in the state of Michigan because of unattended firearms. I'm angry that last year, while I was on vacation visiting my best friend in Indianapolis, I was on the phone with Giffords dealing with a mass shooting on the ground yet again. And that was back when I could probably remember the names of all of those shootings and read them back to you. And now we need a goddamn database. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about the fact that we can't recite the names of those shootings in order anymore because it's just too much for the human mind to handle. My anger has been a steady rise to a vicious boil. And I was going to say it's days like these that it boils over, but the truth is that it's boiling over all the time now. It's boiling over every day, every hour, every minute, and every second. I seem to always be angry now. I told you I lost 4 people in 6 years to firearm suicide. I wish they hadn't had access to the most efficient killing machine available. I wish we'd had a way to remove those guns without committing a crime. I wish we'd had red flag laws. I wish that we lived in a society that valued caring over Darwinism and hope over fear. I'm done wishing. I'm standing up for change, and I want you to stand with me. I'm going to turn that anger into action. I'm going to make partners, but I'm going to break down doors. As an advocate, I'm going to make them so tired of seeing me, they'll see me in their sleep. I'm not going to live in fear anymore. I'm going to stand in front. And my message to the members of Congress who can't seem to find a way to value human life over power, so should you. Thank you.
Thank you, John Gold with Giffords Gun Owners for Safety. Would love to call up now Mariana Mesa, a Courage Fellow with Giffords. Mariana? Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Mariana Mesa, and I am grateful for the opportunity to speak with you today as a Giffords Courage Fellow, traveling in from my hometown of El Paso, Texas. A city you perhaps recognize from a now fleeting story in the slew of your daily news. El Paso, a sprawling hearth of Latina culture and communal love as vibrant and unrelenting as the vivid sunsets and mountainous horizon that cradle it. Yet, the racially motivated massacre on August 3rd, 2019, rendered the beauty of my border community and its passionate individuals the subject of your yearly condolences masked behind the phrase, El Paso Strong. Similar to numerous every schools, every homes, every towns like my own. Oxford Strong, Uvalde Strong, sister cities in their transient notoriety left to find strength and devastation as our leaders shield themselves behind their sympathetic proclamations and vacant calls for action, each identical to the last. Leaders like Governor Greg Abbott are responsible for a heart-wrenching reality in which the names and the families behind these memorials become martyrs for the burgeoning pockets of politicians. Even just a few years of organizing in my community's name, including as a Courage Fellow, acquainted me with the fact that an extensive portion of those who carry the burden of martyrdom under gun violence are young people, with firearms constituting the leading cause of death among children. While this indicates the urgency of youth voices in the conversation surrounding gun violence prevention, it further attests to the downfalls of the media, often highlighting white, middle-class faces and failing to encompass the racial and economic identities of the victims of everyday gun violence. For the sake of Latina communities like mine and Lake Uvalde, do not forget about us again. Amplify the voices of the victims, community violence intervention, and mutual aid organizations over large nonprofits and politicians who exploit the grief of mass shootings. Additionally, recognize that gun violence transcends these incidents deemed newsworthy. Those closest to us, those most vulnerable, can be affected, and thus necessitate an intersectional and comprehensive approach to community violence. We must deconstruct the culture of gun violence in America beyond regulating firearms, palatable rhetoric, and performative action. Do not grow complacent. Do not turn your back on us, for gun violence pierces through every lingering second of your inaction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mariana. Last but certainly not least, Mariah Cooley, a board member at March for Our Lives.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mariah Cooley, and I'm a student at Howard University, a board member for March for Our Lives, and I'm fed up watching people die across this country from preventable gun violence. Kids are being shot and killed, and our elected leaders are failing us. From Washington, D.C., through every state capital, where our leaders are choosing the gun lobby over saving our lives. No one is safe. The gun violence epidemic reaches every community, and especially Black and brown communities, every single day. From Columbine to Parkland to Buffalo to Uvalde, we are the gun violence generation, and we shouldn't have to be. I'm 20 years old, and I'm still fighting here today, and I've been fighting in this movement since I've been 17, and nothing has changed. And that's why so many of us are marching in D.C. this Saturday. That's why over 450 communities across the country are marching in their hometowns, because we are tired of these speeches. We are tired of the debate. I want to live. Kids are dying, and people are doing nothing. The time for action is today. It was yesterday, really. It was 20 years ago, for being honest, and nothing has changed. After young people marched for our lives in 2018 following the tragedy of Parkland, over 150 life-saving laws were passed in states across the country. In red states like Florida, we were able to raise the minimum age for firearms, and Virginia now requires universal background checks, and now Colorado prohibits firearms at election polling sites. But most importantly, my generation showed up, and our elected officials still failed. We had hundreds of thousands of voters in the midterm 2018 election, and we are still here today, and they're doing nothing. But we still have hope. We've always had serious, successful meetings with Republicans and Democrats in Washington, D.C., who are committed to taking action to save our lives. Dozens of us are speaking with lawmakers all week about this issue. But the meetings don't save lives. Action does. And we all march for our lives on June 11th. We will show those politicians that we are not just about talk, we're about action. Thank you.
Let's give everyone a round of applause. This has been a long press event, and I'm just really so excited that you all are still here and that you all are passionate about saving lives. At this time, we're going to open it up to a few questions to see if press have any questions for anyone at Giffords or for any of the folks that are back here. Are there any questions? All right. Well, thank you all so much. We hope that you learned something and that you enjoyed the program. And we're really hoping that, we can push Congress to act so that we can prevent gun violence. Thank you all.